Good evening. My name is Jacques Dupree. I'm the principal broker of Mortgage Allies, and I am in this seat pretty much every month, the last Tuesday of every month. Actually, we have a webinar, and we've been doing this for about 3.5 years plus. So we love to bring you great content that'll actually help you to get a better mortgage. All right. So let's see what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so what we're talking about tonight is, I'm just going to go back so you see the topic. We're talking about mortgage advocacy and support. Okay, so that I know that sounds like the most exciting topic you could ever come up with, right, Jacques? No, not really, but it's important enough that I thought we should talk about it because it's probably something that nobody ever considers. And you know, mortgages are important. They're not just boring, but they're important. So to not pay attention to what kind of support you can get after your mortgage is closed is really at your peril. So and so let's see what we can dig up here. All right. Now remember, this is part of our life cycle cost series. What does that mean? What are mortgage life cycle costs? I'm gonna make my pen slightly thinner. Okay. It basically mortgage lifecycle costs are significant but potentially avoidable costs that you could incur during your mortgage term that might far outweigh the benefits of a slightly lower interest rates if you over-focus on interest rates and minimize the mortgage product itself. I gotta tell you, this is a point of passion for me, okay? Because I see this all the time from clients. I had a new client call me today and say, basically, what's your interest rate? And I was like, okay, let's take this bull by the horns. And it really, you'll see why it's actually a distraction. Interest rates are a huge distraction. Why? Because we allow ourselves to be distracted by them, not understanding that Canada's banks are what's called a saturated oligopoly. I know it sounds like a swear word, but here is basically what it means, okay? In an oligopoly, there are very few but very big parties that compete with each other. In a monopoly, one controls everything. In an oligopoly, multiple big parties control it. And here's the key: they're all that big. They know that if they compete by price, they will basically drive each other into the ground. It's a race to the bottom. So the question is, how do they compete? Okay, they do not compete by price. We know that. So what they do is they compete by image and retention. Oh, okay. Well, let's see if that's true. Okay, let's go to all of our banks' websites, and guess what? Their rates are fairly similar. Okay, so then there's lots of information available about interest rates on their website, but how come there's so little about the products themselves? Here's why: because they compete by retention. I'm not suggesting there's a boogeyman out there. I'm saying that's just oligopolist behavior, okay? So in other words, they will disclose all the interest rates because that's not the point of competition. It is basically by retention. So what you should really do is, not neglecting interest rates, you should focus on the terms or conditions, okay? So why over focus on interest rates when we know that's not how they compete, right? We should be asking a lot more questions about the mortgage products, terms and conditions, and potential consequential limitations and costs. So now it's, what is this mortgage going to cost me? That's what life cycle costs mean, right? There's a sticker price, that's the interest rate. Life cycle cost means in the life of this mortgage, what is it going to cost me in there? Okay, that is what the life cycle costs actually mean, okay? So a very small interest rate, because most people only look at interest rates, a very small interest rate is great, but the life cycle costs then very easily wipe out that savings. And I'm talking really, really easy wipe out those savings. All right. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. You can probably see. Okay. So what we're going to talk about again today is how can client support and advocacy impact your mortgage? Okay. What is good support? What should you be looking out for when it comes to a mortgage? It's a big deal, right? And so, most people see support as like, yeah, it's not, it's kind of like a nice to have, these guys are really good, or no, I can't stand that. That's how we kind of look at mortgage support, right? but there's serious money consequences involved. Okay, so when I when I talk about client support, I'm talking after you've moved into the house or after your mortgage has closed. Okay, and by that I mean also it's the assistance that you need from your lender once your mortgage is closed. An advocacy is an advocate is basically somebody who argues or works in support of another. Okay, so in other words, when you need it and you don't necessarily know all the ins and out, is this somebody that you trust, you can go to, it can quote unquote fight for you. Okay, that's what it really means there. Now, just a caution here, I use advocacy and support kind of mixed, a little bit naughty of me, but it's kind of, they're so close together, I sometimes do use them intertwined. Okay, so forgive me for that. All right. I do poke at the bear, not necessarily because I feel like it. Okay, I do believe that most lenders try their best to give the best service to clients. I really truly believe that. Okay, so I'm not here to get controversial and sensational value out of this. I'm here to point out to my clients what really could cost them money. Okay, very important to note that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. There's very few things that bug me more. You buy a product from a company and you go to an electronics store, you buy a product from a company, next week you call in for customer service, okay? And the person you talk to at customer service knows the product less than you do, okay? So you have to explain to the person how it works, and then you get frustrated because you want to talk to a sales guy. You call your sales guy and say, can you help me? And your sales guy says, no, that's not my job anymore. You got to go back to customer service. So they tell you go back to the same guy who couldn't help you before, which absolutely drives me nuts. Okay, so the point is though, there are, if you look at the last product you bought last time. Okay, if we really are honest, you could actually see some of the poor service coming, but we don't pay attention to it. Okay, so in other words, we got the product, but if we ask a few questions, especially, I'm not talking just about a cell phone, I'm talking about like your mortgage, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. How about if we asked more and better questions? Wouldn't we get to the root, and wouldn't we be able to protect ourselves against poor service and make a decision to avoid it? Maybe. Let's investigate. Okay, so I am not a customer service expert. I'm not suggesting I ain't got the answer to all customer service things, but I've noticed two things that contribute to poor or excellent client service. And I'm talking specifically in the mortgage industry also. All right, so let's see what we're talking about there. I've noticed two things that impact customer service. The first one is efficiencies, and I'll explain. The second one is compensation. Okay, so efficiencies meaning to say is this. Okay, businesses, it's no rocket science, this, right? Businesses must focus on sales and profit. Okay, so most businesses will get the product out the door. That's how they make money. Okay, so sadly, after sales is essentially a cost center to businesses. So you got sales guys, they get driven to sell because that brings a profit in. You got after sales, which is in many cases seen as a cost center. Okay, so you can expect your salespeople to be paid a lot higher than your customer service people, right? So guess what happens? You can almost surely expect a lesser experience in after sales, because guess what, they don't necessarily get compensated for that, right? And they get less resources. Why? Because it's a cost center, it's not a profit center. Okay, for most companies. All right, so let's see how you can expect service in the mortgage business. Okay, so if you once your mortgage is closed, hey Tom, thank you for joining us, appreciate it. We're talking about customer service. I know it's not an exciting topic, but I think you may get quite a bit from it here. So thanks for joining us. So this is how you can expect to get service in the mortgage industry. And depending on what it is, it could cost you more or less. So everything I'm talking about today, look at it from a cost point of view. What could it cost you? What could the life cycle cost be to you as a client? Okay. First one is there's a web portal. Okay. So you kind of go in there, you log into your portal, and you can see your mortgage details, and you maybe even have a chat, a live chat on there, everything like this. Okay. Very convenient. Okay. But sadly for me, it is becoming most lenders' primary client service method. In other words, I don't know about you. Sure, I can read a statement, I can see what my amortization is, but you can't really get strategy from that. Okay, if you need to make a change. So careful about that. I'm not saying this is bad. I think this is great to be able to check your own details. Okay. Next one is electronic communication. You may have an email or a chat or something with your lender. Again, should be great, but guess what? You're talking to a call center member there who has very little mortgage experience. And I got to tell you, I feel for banks, because when you're selling this many products and you got people to be trained for all of those products, it is not easy. Okay. Next one is in branch. We're getting a little bit better now, right? So you visit your local branch if it's with a bank, and you talk to your financial advisor. The problem is you're talking to somebody who did not place your mortgage, and they sell many, many financial products. And guess what else? They will be rotated to the next branch pretty shortly. Okay. So there's no real relationship for me when it comes to that. So it's kind of nice. I don't like speaking to a banker, and every time I'm having to explain my situation again and say, well, I spoke to Susie last week, and now you're gone out to explain the same thing to you again. It's very frustrating. Okay. Next one is phone support, right? So you can call your lender, but guess what? You are definitely going to speak to a scripted call center member, and I find it very supporting. The last one is definitely the best, okay? But it is kind of like a unicorn, all right? So you access client service by any of the applicable methods above, and from the salesperson who placed your mortgage. Okay. As I said, this is very, very rare, but very good for clients. And guess what else it does? It keeps the salesperson accountable for the product they sold you. If they sold you a piece of crap, guess what happens? They're going to have to defend it. Okay. So I love this here. Keep the salespeople accountable for the product that they sell you, and they give you support. Okay, so now that we know this, what can you do to make sure? Well, so you go to a bank, okay, and you say, okay, I want to get you a mortgage. So how can you check whether you are actually going to get support from that person who sold you the product? So check for evidence that the mortgage salesperson can and will provide after sales client service. Why do I say can? Some banks will absolutely prohibit the salesperson from giving service. So even if you call, Joe and say, Joe, you need my mortgage, can you give me some help, please? They will not be able to help you. If they go to customer service, they'll be like, bye-bye, we're not talking to you. The client needs to call us, okay? So that is never a good thing, but it is pretty much the default, okay? So ask that question. Make sure you understand. Don't just say, oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can help you. Evidence, like how many of your clients are you actually helping currently? That's a big difference here. Right. Number two is a very interesting one, to say the least. Okay. So compensation, remember we're talking about two things that you can check on to determine what kind of service you can expect from your lender. Okay, your future lender. Okay, so first one is set efficiencies, right? If they're not allowing their guys to help you, they're probably not going to help you. All right. Compensation. Salespeople are compensated and incentivized to sell. That's what they do. Otherwise, they won't have a job. Okay. Now, here's the key. Like most of us, how people are compensated, okay, will determine their focus and also their business behavior. If you're compensating a broker to sell you a rate, guess what they're going to do? They're going to sell you a rate. If you don't compensate them, or if you don't incentivize them to support you afterwards, they are not going to support you. It is very straightforward like that, okay? It's really not, I kind of like the fact that there may be some people who are altruistic and support you, but that's very rare, okay? Now, this is so important. I want you to really take note of this, okay? Almost all mortgage salespeople in the mortgage business, I said, are compensated upfront and only incentivized to sell. We are incentivized to sell. Okay, so you're like, oh, Jacques, you know, you're like speaking against yourself. Potentially, but we'll get to the end. Absolutely. It's important as we do the right thing for you. Okay. Most lenders won't allow their salespeople to provide after client service. Okay, so if I, in general cases, if I place your mortgage with Bank X and you come to me 2 years later and say, Jacques, can you do this for me, please? I'm like, I'm so sorry, I can't. They won't allow me to do it. Okay, so the question to you is that good for you? Are these policies good for you as a client? Okay, so let's see what happens. What are the consequences of these lender policies? Okay, number one, client service. Okay, so while you can call your mortgage broker with your problem, they might empathize you. Okay, but they will not be able to solve your problem. They will just refer you to the client service people that basically you didn't want to work with. Okay, here's another problem, and for me that's a serious problem. If this one here, if you come to your sales guy who cannot support you, all right, guess what? They're going to try potentially, I'm not saying there's evil people out there, they will potentially try and take that problem of yours and turn it into a sales problem. Okay, so now the very same guy that you really loved, now all of a sudden it feels like they're selling to you again, right? So do you really want to do that? I can't stand that. If I come to someone with a problem to fix and they quickly turn that into a sales opportunity, it really, really annoys me. Okay, important that. And the next one is you have limited opportunities. Okay, so from my experience, lender support staff are not as knowledgeable as their mortgage salespeople. That's not an arrogant statement. If somebody sells, they're supposed to know their product very, very well to be able to explain that, okay? And so often you got call center staff are not that knowledgeable about their products, okay? So what happens is you could miss out on savings. So let's just say you're calling customer service and you're wondering if you can do that, do this, what will save you more money. You're not necessarily going to get to the real bottom line best strategy, okay? Important also. So retention, all right? So should you wish to, if you want to move your mortgage to a different lender, it's going to be harder for you to move it, right? Because you call any cell phone company, there's a retention department, okay? They'll throw, because the only things that you try and keep you there, okay? Which is never a good thing for you. The last one for me is something actually, which is a problem, okay? It's called churning. So here is what happens when you've got a broker who gets paid upfront only. What happens is when you come to the end of your term, 5 years, okay, then what happens is the broker actually competes with that same bank that they put, not all of them, but the majority of them. That broker is now competing with the very same bank where your mortgage was, that they put your mortgage at, right? So guess what happens? Now what happens is the broker, if your mortgage stays with that same bank that they placed you with 5 years ago, the broker doesn't get paid. Okay, well, guess what happens? Now the broker has to come up with some kind of story to say, oh no, we got to go to that lender now. Okay, and guess what happens? Otherwise, they don't get paid. So there you go as a client again to go to another lender so the broker gets paid. So who's that good for, right? That's not good for the broker. It's not good for you as a client. Okay, I don't even think it's good for the bank. It's good for no one, but it's a policy that is there. And we call that churning. So in other words, moving clients from bank to bank to bank to bank to bank to bank, it's not necessarily a good thing. Here's to be clear, I'm not saying that every broker does it, but this is the potential that you're being exposed to if your sales guy is basically cut off from service and not incentivized to retain you or to serve you. Make sense? That's very important for you to understand that. All right. Okay. So what can you do about it? Because so we know those things exist or they could exist. And so what can you do to protect yourself from it? Okay. There are 4 things here that will really, really help you. Number one is understand the lender's philosophy. Okay, that's very straightforward. Does the lender allow the salespeople to support you after the mortgage closing? If the lender doesn't, your salesperson will most likely not. Okay, unless they are Mother Teresa, they probably won't. Okay, it's simple because they got to go, right? And so the next one is compensation. Check how your mortgage salesperson is compensated. If their entire compensation is upfront, they are not incentivized to support you and probably won't. Okay, so mortgage brokers, depending on what mortgage you get, I'm pretty transparent about this stuff. You can get paid between 0.8% to about 1.2% of the mortgage from a prime lender. Okay, so in other words, if they get all of that up front, guess what? They're probably not going to support you, right? That's just human behavior, not because it's evil. It's just what it is. All right. Next one is, this is very, very important. Okay, what is the cost to the salesperson if they move your mortgage from one lender to another? Okay, so are they losing something by moving you? That's always a great check and balance for me. Okay, if the salesperson only gains, okay, their suggestions might be in conflict of interest with you. And so in other words, if the only way I get compensated is to move you to a different lender, well, that could be, I'm not saying it is, it could be in conflict of interest with your goals, right? Because the sales guy wants to get paid, so he's going to move you, or he could move you so they can get paid. Is that really good for you? But if they stand to lose something by moving you, now for me, the advice becomes a bit more trustworthy. Okay, because they got some skin in the game, as we say. All right, so that's important. That the next one is, okay, if you want to make sure that you're going to get support, if your salesperson is incentivized to provide customer support, that's number one. You like that, and they have support staff. Okay, so all due respect, we all start our businesses. That's what happens. Okay, but if you're the only person, if I'm the only person in my company, I can tell you now, there's a lot to do every day. Okay, if you call me to make your payment change, I'm probably not going to do it. But if I have dedicated staff, okay, that report to me personally, not to some other people, they report to me personally, and those people are literally designated to provide clients with service, you're probably going to get support. Okay, if not, you're probably not going to get support. Okay, so you can see here, you ask those 4 questions here, you're probably going to get to the bottom of what service you can expect down the road in your mortgage. And as you can see, all of these have a cost implication on you, a direct dollar, measurable dollar cost on your mortgage, if these are in fact true. Okay, important to note there. All right, so let's talk about advocacy. So what is advocacy? Basically, advocacy is, well, let me start here. So when I say advocacy, it's basically if there's a misunderstanding or you need advice, who can you go to that you can trust is not going to tell you, what you will tell you the truth and actually get down to the bottom of the situation. Okay, that's what an advocate is. But as mortgage brokers, we cannot alter mortgage terms and conditions. We cannot. Okay, so I'm not trying to create that impression. We're not like, oh, we got this magic back road. We do not have that at all. Okay, but sometimes there are strategies that you can help you to save money, which I'll show in a second here. Okay, so again, if a mortgage lender does not incentivize or excludes its sales people from its after-sales service, your salesperson will probably not give you support in a meaningful way. Okay, they might go, yeah, that's great, fantastic, but they probably won't give you support or do stuff. Okay, so when would you need advocacy? Because I'm a pretty self-sufficient dude. I kind of like to do things myself. Okay, so why would I need my mortgage broker? Okay, here's what you need to. Well, you may need a mortgage broker that if they can be an advocate for you, it will actually save you a gazillion dollars. Okay, so mortgage renewals. Well, guess what? The stat, I've heard a stat, is commonly thrown out in the industry. when it comes to mortgage renewal time, 85% of Canadians will just sign that renewal agreement. Okay, why? Because who wants to, again, give pay stubs and employment letters and blah, 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 blah to move your mortgage to a different bank, right? So in other words, you are, certainly the banks are known for not giving you a very competitive rate at renewal. Okay, why? Because of that nature. And also they operate what's called imposted rates. Okay, so why would you give somebody the best rates when you don't have to, right? So the question I have for you is this: in your mortgage renewal, who presents you with the mortgage renewal? Can your broker or your sales guy do it? If not, well, that's a problem, right? Because how do you know if you're getting the best offer? There are one lender that allows me, the broker, to present you with the renewal agreement. And guess what? If it comes to me and it is not competitive, it's going to go back right the way it came from. And then I can come to you and say, hey, the lender doesn't want to change its rates. Now I have justification that we should look for a different lender, right? It's not just like, oh gosh, I don't get paid, right? So that's important for you. That renewals is a major issue. What people don't understand is the mortgage you get at renewal will very much determine your rates you get in another 5 years' time when that mortgage renews. Okay, it's a big deal. All right. The other thing is nuance. There are nuances in mortgages. Okay, and so not all terms and conditions are created equally. And since since client service reps roles are usually not strategic, they may not exploit all your options. Okay, so here's a good example. Okay, clients want to pay their mortgage off quicker, but they don't want to wreck their budget. So they say, I'd really like to pay monthly, but pay our mortgage off quicker. So if you went to your bank today and say, hey, I'm looking for monthly accelerated payments, they're going to look at you like you have 10 heads, okay, because it doesn't exist. Accelerated monthly payments, that doesn't exist. You get accelerated bi-weekly and accelerated weekly, but they can actually create one for you, okay? And so it's actually very straightforward. A good broker will say, no, this is how you structure it, and then they can do it. And in fact, we serve our clients, okay? And Julia's in this webinar, she works for me, and so we structured. You can actually create a monthly accelerated payment, and what we do is we actually fill in the forms, we send it to you, you sign it, we send it to the bank, and guess what? It saves you money. Absolutely saves you money, all right? And then limitations. All right, so what people don't know is how you make extra payments to your mortgage makes a difference of how you pay your mortgage down faster, right? So if you call to a local call center, and again, I'm not trying to say they're not good. I'm just saying they don't necessarily have the experience that somebody who's been 17 years in the mortgage industry has, to give you that kind of option, right? So if a client comes to me and says, hey, I want to pay my mortgage off quicker, but I really don't want to, I don't want to wait until I've got $10,000 to pay extra. How can I do it? We can structure it through what's called prepayments to pay your mortgage off very quickly and very convenient, or quicker and very convenient. Then you may not necessarily hear from the call center, right? Because how you increase the payments, if you increase the payments, the regular payments, for argument's sake, you may or may not be able to drop those payments down. And if you are allowed to drop them down, if you wake up the next morning and say, oh, shoot, can we up them again? You can't, okay? So important to understand that. Number 4, that's a big deal. So rates are not as low as we like them to be right now. What if rates come down in 2 years' time, okay? And you're sitting with a rate blah, 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 and you think, oh my gosh, I could actually save money right now, okay? Who does that math for you? Okay, if your sales guy is not incentivized to provide you with support, they may do the math for you, but you will never know if you actually save money or they're just saying it so they can get a new mortgage. And again, I'm not trying to say there's evil people out there. I'm not saying everybody's cheating out there. I'm not. I'm saying there's human behavior. So I always say, don't leave a piece of meat out on the grass and expect the dog not to eat it, okay? It's going to eat the meat, all right? So I'm saying to you, don't dangle something in front of somebody and think that every human being is not going to take advantage of that and make themselves gain, Okay, that's just human behavior. So we got to be careful about. That's what I'm talking about here. Okay, so what you're supposed to be getting is if rates go down, I am a numbers person. Okay, so when you tell me that's a good idea, don't tell me, oh, it's a great idea. No, no, I want to see numbers. I want to see it here. Show it to me. Okay, and I don't know if many people are going to do those kind of details. All right. I'm saying it's important for you with a proper advocate to do that math for you, to show it to you. And if the numbers don't make sense, to say, listen, you're wasting your time. Let's wait if rates drop more, maybe blah, 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 and go through it with you. So these are advocacy things that can absolutely save you tens of thousands of dollars, or even worse, they may cost you tens of thousands of dollars where you may never even know. Okay. That's why you can see, if you take an interest rate of 0.1 difference between two mortgages, it's gonna make very little difference to your mortgage. It'll do something, but any of these things will just wipe out any savings you've had anyway. Cool? Okay, so here's something to also understand, and we're actually almost done, okay? What I've noticed is, and this is so telling, right? I can't remember who said it. I say, how you do anything, you do everything. Okay, and we are like that. We're very consistent as human beings, even though we think we're not. Okay, how a lender's after sales service philosophy, okay, can also be a great predictor of the quality and transparency of its products. In other words, if it keeps its salespeople involved to make sure its clients are taken care of, and customer service is not just this dirty cost center, I can tell you now, you will probably find their products reflect the same philosophy. Okay, so that's why I say, don't be distracted by interest rates. Find out those things. Okay, find out those things, and so that you know that your mortgage is in good hands for the next 10, 15, 20 years until the mortgage is paid off. Okay, very important. All right. And as you can see here, the examples we use today have cost implications. They are not just huggy, feely, nicey things. They have real cost implications. Customer service is real cost implications. There are, but they're very few. If I say one, I am not lying, maybe two lenders that will allow the broker to personally serve you. And if I move your mortgage away from that lender, there's actually a cost to me. Okay, so I got to really think clearly and make sure that I justify it for you or not. Okay, that's why it's so important to see that. All right. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. What I'm going to do is, we always kind of do at the end here, we do a little bit of a market segment for you, where are rates right now, what the market looks like, and stuff like that. It's really, really helpful for most clients because, you hear so many rumors. Okay, so let me start by saying this, that fixed rates are not determined by the Bank of Canada. Okay, so it was last week, the Bank of Canada moved up its rates. Okay, that does not determine fixed rate. It may affect fixed rates loosely through what we call the bond yields, right? But it does not determine fixed rate. It only directly affects prime rates, which directly affect adjustable or variable rate mortgages. Okay, very important. So when you're having a beer with a friend and they say, oh my gosh, the government's going to move rates again next week or whatever, just tell them, listen, you can chill, because the government does not determine, fixed rate mortgages. Of course, what they do is when they move the overnight rate, that affects the market, which affects rates. I understand it, but it's not a direct movement of those rates. Okay, so here's what's quite interesting. See the pink here? That's a 5-year term. So again, disclaimer, I am not an economist. I'm just telling you what we have seen, okay? This kind of purple is a 3-year, and the yellow is 2-year. This is kind of interesting because normally, historically, things look like this. The 1-year rate, okay, and the 5-year rate. So the 1-year rates are normally lower than the 5-year rates. But look, they're actually inverted, okay? They are actually like this right now. Okay, 1 and a 5-year. So that's kind of like, so a lot of people are saying they think this is going to flip over the right way around and rates may come down. We do not know. Okay, if you look at rates in general, they're still if you look at the 45-year average, rates are still lower than the average. The problem is house prices. House prices are significantly higher than what they were 45 years ago, right? But the rates themselves are actually still quite below the average. Okay, so when people say rates going to go down, I go, I'm not an economist. I just know this. Whatever you say in the morning is kind of wrong at night, by nighttime, right? So I'm just saying it's a very awkward marketplace right now. Okay. By the way, see what you see here? This is, if you want to roughly determine the interest rates, you can never be that exact. We take that bond yield and we add between 1 and 2% to it, and then you get to what you think the rate might be. Okay, so if you take 3.5% here, okay, for the 3-year, and you add 1.5, take the average between 2 years, 2% and 1%, 1.5%, you get 5%. Okay, that is actually quite low compared to what's out there in the market right now. There are some specials that get into that right now, but that gives you some kind of idea, right? And it depends on what time of the year also what rates will do. All right. So Canadian inflation, this is, October, this is December right here. I'm sure we'll get January's pretty soon, but thankfully the inflation is coming down. But remember, you don't see it here, but in January of 21, we were sitting at 1%, right? So the government is definitely still driving, the Bank of Canada is still driving inflation down. And so hopefully they've stopped their thing right now. I don't know if done, but we'll have to see how it goes. Okay, so that's the driver here, trying to get it down. Okay, so this is what we call the policy rate, or what we call the overnight rate, and you can see here in 2001 2021 it's just gone up, and so this definitely determines variable interest rates. And by the way, these dates that the government's meeting on every year is predetermined. Okay, it is 8 times a year they meet, and the last one was 25 January, and 7 December was the one before that, and they just moved it up by 0.25. So if you had a variable rate mortgage, definitely your rate is up by 0.25. Okay, that's important to understand. So in general, it's very hard. Rates are not the way they used to be in prior to 2017. Now, for us to give you a rate, I need to know quite a few things before I can quote you a rate. It never used to be like that, but it is like that now. So a 5-year fix, you can expect between about 4.89 and a 5.24. When I talk about this stuff, I'm talking about clean mortgages. I'm not talking stuff with the life cycle costs that make it an expensive mortgage. I'm talking about clean mortgages, okay? So that's, sorry about that. That's a 5-year fixed. And so if you look at a variable or adjustable rate, prime is now 6.7. Again, every bank can set its own prime rate. Most people don't know that. But let's just say the prime rate is 6.7. Then you can get essentially a prime minus 0.9, which is 5.8, to about prime minus 0.4, which is 6.3. This is what you can expect for rates right now. Okay? You can reach us right here anytime, and you can also reach us on any of these social channels. There's a lot of resources on oakville-mortgage.ca, so please feel free to dig around there, and if you have any questions, do ask. If you ask me a question, if you call me and ask me a question, I'm not going to try and sell you to death. I promise you. I'm an educator. If somebody has a mortgage need, I help them. One thing that's great about mortgages is not like iPhones. If you have one, maybe somebody can sell you a second iPhone. If you have one mortgage, I cannot sell you a second mortgage, okay, for no reason. So I don't put pressure on my clients. I'm very proud to say to you that we've not had clients lose their homes because we sell like crazy. We do not. We respect our clients. We meet your needs, and that's it. Okay, there's no need to drive our clients crazy. Okay, I am done. Thank you so much. I hope to see you next 28th of February, and we'll talk about terms and conditions. Have yourself a great night. This will be posted pretty soon on our website. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night.